Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us. We did hear that it was a bit of a hectic week at Niantic, so thank you very much for taking the time out of your day.
No, thank
Um,
you for inviting me. And then, yeah, I wish I could spend more time just uh, answering questions in the forum or just being more present in the community. But I do read all of the feedback that comes in through either the subreddit or the forum. I have all of the Play Store reviews, the App Store reviews just piped directly into my inbox. I do
okay.
consume a lot of the feedback. I just don't have as much time to be as vocal on the kind of closing the loop side. So that is something that, like, duly noted. I know communication is uh, has been an issue and continues to be an issue, but we are aware and we are trying to work on improving it. So I hope this kind of a call, it's something that I've been trying to do with the first Saturdays of just
Mhm.
jumping into random first Saturday chats to kind of answer some questions. But I did just want to say thank you, one, for putting this call together, for bringing the people together, and then also thanks for all the questions.
No problem. I would just jump right into it because I am very bad at small talking. Yeah, well, question one. When doing balance changes to the game, like for example now with COVID going on, where do you start? Do you start with a goal? For example, when the drone came along, how did you think about how to use it basically?
Yeah, a lot of the balance changes, so we're looking at, um, for example, usage goals. Where are our daily actives or monthly actives at? What are players actually doing in the game? How does that affect the game economy? How does it affect, retention? So with new players coming in versus some of our more hardcore or older veteran players, there are different cohorts or different kinds of players or personas within the user base. And so we
Mm-hmm.
do look at all of those things. With the COVID knob specifically, I guess the added layer on top of that was just the changes that we make in Ingress are global changes. So um, the COVID pandemic is affecting different places in different ways. There are some places that are more locked down than others. Um, and so when we make a change, we're trying to take into account, um, you know, how do we make sure that players are able to play safely? And still able to play. So
Mm-hmm.
that's some of the considerations where I think if we had more granularity and we could say in these specific areas, this is how the game works, in those specific areas it works differently, that could be something that we should look into. The way that we treated, for example, the Battle Beacon playtest, where it only worked in initially New Zealand and Taiwan, and then only in Taiwan. The only way that we were able to do that specifically is by working directly with the vanguards and directly with players to grant those battle beacons in those places.
Mm-hmm.
Once we actually shipped the battle beacon feature live, now it's live for everyone, or I should say for players with 40 million AP and higher, but available globally
Mhm.
everywhere.
Mm.
So those kind of knob changes, trying to balance that out in light of the pandemic has been really challenging or really tricky to try to thread that needle.
Mm. Well, Carlo, will you next question?
Yeah, sure. So with the advent of Ingress Prime, we had this new amazing feature, which is the possibility to change the avatar on the map from the classic triangle to also these new four archetypes we got. So spiritualistic, skeptic, alchemist, and dreamer. I think Ishira loves this possibility too very much. There is a lot of curiosity from the players if the other 9 archetypes that we know in the lore are also coming to the game, and if they're coming.
Yeah. So, I mean, this goes back to the previous question about looking at the usage metrics, or in this case, like how many of those custom avatars or there's new avatars actually got purchased, and then
Mhm.
weighing that with how much time does it spend or how much time does it take us to actually develop those new features or those new items. And so with the avatars that we had, there's certainly some that were a lot more popular than others. So for example, like NL1331, that was really popular. Something like
I know.
the avatars that were kind of more of like the D20, kind of the skeptic, or the different nemesis kind of archetypes. They were not as popular, and so we try to weigh that with, if we're going to spend, X many days working on these new assets versus trying to fix some of the longstanding issues in the game, that's how we're trying to prioritize. So it's not so much will we or won't we do them. It's more about when should we try to tackle that feature request or that item. So we don't always get the prioritization right. I think some people have asked about, why did we spend time working on this feature instead of working on that feature? So it is something that we're constantly kind of monitoring the feedback, monitoring the different metrics, or the different kind of, I think that the question from previously was kind of more about the game performance or the game metrics. So we look at all of those things and then try to decide if we need to shift the priority of things or reorder the priority of things. I think that also there's kind of a related question to that of making sure that the team is actually listening to players. And so we are listening, but it's also the flip side, or the kind of probably more important step of like actually carrying through and then addressing that feedback and having those changes happen in the game. So I know, like, one example would be there are a lot of requests every time that we post our release notes about high frame rate mode, or like a 60 FPS mode in Ingress. And so I do see all of those requests, but it's balancing, should we spend the engineering time and the QA time and the testing time on trying to create that high performance mode, or should we spend that same amount of time and those resources on, hey, we know that COM needs fixes, and we've tried multiple times to fix COM. I've tried to go at least at a high level into some detail of why that's been so difficult for us to fix and why it's taken so long. But that's the kind of discussion that we have on the team about, okay, this is what we should work on next. It's not usually, no, we will never ever do this thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. It makes sense that there are things in the, I will call it, queue of new features to implement in the game that have the higher priority or lower priority.
Yeah, and the interest involved in it, because I may want all of those archetype, but I'm a lore person, and there's not as many of us as there are players. So
yeah. And it is also like an ever-changing list. So new things get added. Some things may end up getting punted or removed. And also that priority list changes. Like sometimes we get some feedback from, for example, our leadership team, or we get feedback from Vanguards that changes the order that we do things. So that's how we kind of try to approach that. I should also just make a note, because I think, so Tobias had shared, here's some questions that we had. And so I have read through those, but if you don't have to go in that order, or you don't have to go with that explicit list. I'm happy to just have a conversation with y'all about, what you're interested in Ingress. So
okay,
yeah,
awesome.
We're very happy to go with that, because for me and Tobias especially, it's kind of the first time we do an interview, a proper interview, and we're not very fluent with English, so it's a bit.
I have to say I'm fluent, but I don't like my pronunciation, so I'm a little bit anxious. So
yeah, your pronunciation is perfect. I understand you perfectly. I am kind of curious if you actually look like this. I don't know. I don't know what
he
your profile
doesn't.
photo is.
He doesn't look like that at all.
I do not know what you mean. It's my best picture hand.
He's the tethered hand.
Shush.
That's awesome. So I have the next question, and actually I'm kind of invested in this one because I run IFS events and a lot of giveaway events, or I used to a lot when we had this ability. Is there any way of getting passcodes again in the future for factions to use as giveaways for like events that they're running by themselves or for their own puzzles and such? I know I'm part of the swag community, And one of the biggest things that we want to see come back is the ability to be able to run our own events with actual prizes that are, you know, either passcodes or swag that's officially coming from Niantic, whether we have to purchase it from you guys or not. That would be an awesome feature to come back.
Yeah. So when we first started things out, I remember the first request for, this wasn't passcodes, but it was specifically like, could we get some swag because we want to help promote the game, or like, we're going to this comic convention and we want to talk about Ingress. Do you have anything that we could kind of help distribute? And that was something that really helped us early out, was trying to build those kind of grassroots player initiatives. So that kind of stuff, yeah, I would love to see us spend a little bit more time trying to support community organizers and community hosts so that they can do what they're already trying to do, but bigger or better. The specific question about like, can you make passcodes available for purchase? So that's a really tricky question. So the reason why I asked the team to make that change is, if you're familiar with what's going on with Epic and Apple right now, Epic got in a little bit of trouble. They're in the middle of some litigation because they're trying to circumvent Apple's platform fees. So one of the things that I didn't want to have happen for Ingress was that basically we get in trouble, or we get seen as trying to do something that we shouldn't be doing. Because if we're selling a passcode, if we're selling items, but not giving Google or Apple their percentage fee, that's technically probably not the position that we want to be in. And so making sure that we are properly going through the right channels so that we don't get our team in trouble or we don't get the company in trouble, that's the lens that I was looking at. I didn't want that to be, you know, putting a kibosh on community efforts. So if there are ways that we could try to make those, whether they're passcodes or merch available to players in different ways, that I'm 100% supportive of. I think it would be, I'm not a lawyer, so I should preface that, but trying to figure out what the right way is to allow agents or who are community organizers to also financially support the game, and then, you know, have those be prizes for other players. I think that's something that we could spend time on. But that's sort of the backstory behind the why that passcode stuff changed to moving more into the app, was more of kind of a legal question. The other stuff though about just making passcodes available for community organizers, I think that should be a pretty straightforward solve of I know that right now, like, we work with the Feb Games group or the IFS organizers so that they have a set of those master passcodes. So we have that set up. So maybe there's a way that we can kind of expand on that further, where you don't have to pay for them. So we're not breaking any rules. Like, they're, you know, we're allowed to give agents items. So maybe, yeah, let me take that as an action item to follow up with our team about what ways we might be able to kind of build on what we're already doing with those master passcodes or other things like that. And I completely understand the use case of for the players that either, you know, one because of AP gain or from level up. Right now, like the first Saturday events that I've gone to, like, I've seen some people give out Starbucks gift cards or like Google Play gift cards or things like that. And yeah, it would be really cool if you could actually get Ingress stuff or like official merch or items. So yeah, it's not something that we haven't spent too much time on trying to address that specific thing, but I think we should.
Yeah, that we would appreciate that, because I know it's a big question in the swag community of that kind of explains why the digital packages for the anomalies changed a bit. And but a lot of the people in the swag community were talking about, well, if they just allowed us to buy more codes again, we would just do it and we could be able to support Niantic in a way that we want to. But the way that you just explained it really kind of helps us understand why that was changed. I know from my own experience, like, I wasn't just giving away codes for IFS, when I went to Chicago, I was writing codes in Nemesis runes and putting them in my pictures as an embedded reporter just for the fun of it. Or when you guys were doing live streams, like I gave away a Jarvis and a Hank Johnson because it was fun. And I know that it's something that other agents would like to do. So thank you for explaining that.
And then I should also note too that like I am a huge fan of physical merch as well. Like I think it's really nice to have a physical souvenir or like a totem or something tangible. And so I know that those mod cards or those loadout cards, like there is getting that piece right, and so that we're doing it in the right way that works for the platform partners, Apple and Google, but also lets us continue doing what we were doing before. That is stuff that we should spend time on. It's just, I think the other part that I'm not sure how people are, but like we are a very small team. So across all of us, we're all wearing multiple hats to try to get things done. There's no one on the team that's just sort of like waiting around for something to do. We're all pretty busy just trying to get stuff done to move the game forward and continue to grow the game. And the team is super passionate about the player feedback and the community, and making sure that we're all players on the team, that we understand what we're doing, who we're doing it for, why we're doing it. So please keep the feedback coming. Please know that it's not falling on deaf ears. It's just I feel like a lot of that stuff is on me as the producer, just making sure that we're working on the right things at the right time. And so that's something that, I absolutely, want to improve on myself. So.
Thank you.
I apologize for stepping into the wound like this, but it goes to one of our next questions. Apparently there's a bit of a problem with missions at the time. Either not getting accepted at all, or not getting the email notification at all. Are there any problems at the moment in the background?
Sorry, my headphones just sort of dropped for a moment. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. Right now there seems to be problems with missions and mission authoring tool. So apparently missions are not getting accepted, or if they get accepted, they are not getting emails. Is there something in the background happening?
So I think one I need to still follow up with our team about, but I do know that one of the things that happened recently was that instead of going through missions basically from oldest to newest, I think something may have gotten jumbled, or there's some issue where that order wasn't happening in the right order. So there was that piece. I think there were also maybe some delays. So I need to follow up with our team to get more info. But I do know the team is aware, they're working on it. Once I get an official answer that I can share, I'll make sure that we update the team, or update the player base of what's going on. But it is something that we're looking into.
Right, great. I would like to get into a bit of a more personal question. You said earlier, you reported earlier a bit of your experience with agents requesting passcodes. So I would like to ask, what is your best memory of Ingress from the first phase of your collaboration with Niantic, the early phases of Ingress?
There's so many different just crazy, awesome, ridiculous things that happened in the Niantic labs at Google days. So for some background, because I'm not sure if everyone's aware, so I was part of the team, the Niantic team, prior to shipping Ingress. When Niantic spun out of Google, I ended up staying with Google. So I was with the Google AR and VR team. I had my own startup in Google's incubator, and then I was part of Gradient Ventures, which is Google Ventures AI-focused fund for a while. The reason I came back to Niantic was because I had so much fun with the original Niantic crew, and there's just something so special about Ingress that I don't see in any other app or game, but even among real world games, there is no game and there's no community that's like the Ingress one. I know how special and how unique it is. I see a lot of real world games that do basically try to emulate this kind of gameplay where I look at it as play that happens between points of interest or around points of interest, like you're trying to collect these creatures or collect these items around places. But for Ingress, the actual places matter so deeply. And I think thinking about some of the things that one drew me back, but also that I love so much about that first go around was the fact that we were able to help people connect on a common interest. So like, two players both were playing Ingress. They had that common interest in either scavenger hunts or geocaching, or something drew them to this kind of like sci-fi real world game. But then after you have that kind of shared common interest, also finding out that you share a lot of other things in common as well. Like maybe you and I both like Star Wars, or we both like baseball or whatever. Just being able to like make friends with other people. And then the thing that's special is that I could make friends on Reddit or Twitter that share a common interest with me. It's not unheard of to find people who share your similar passions, but it is hard to find those people that have that same passion that you share that also lives across the street from you. And the fact that we were doing these meetups and people were coming to the meetups and coming to Anomalies and doing these things, we were when we first started designing like the first Anomaly event, or how different Ingress features would work, we were doing things that we had no idea if people would like it, if people would actually do it. And it's really fantastic to see how the game has grown, how the community's changed over time. And I think the thing that drew me back to the team was just one, so many cherished memories from the Niantic Labs at Google days, but then also the potential for what I see that Ingress could be able to do, what Niantic is able to do. I think we've only really just scratched the surface. I think where we're trying to go, we absolutely want to grow Ingress, get it back to the kind of thriving community and player base. And we know that in order to do those things, we need live events, we need a more stable game client that works and is more performant, or polish the kind of rough edges. But I think the other thing is just, I wasn't part of the team with the Prime launch, but it does feel like the ways that we can help improve things going forward is really, again, listening to that player feedback, but then more importantly, acting on that player feedback. So when players are telling us, here's how we feel about the visuals or how hard it is to see things, that we actually follow through and then make those changes. So yeah, that was a long-winded answer, but so many fond memories. And then I'm really excited to make new ones with the new team and where we're heading.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I have been an Ingress player since 2014, so I although young, I still remember very, very well how I got involved into the game and what it meant to me at the time, and how I came to meet all the community around it. And I still believe there is no community like the Ingress community, the Ingress family. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
I guess I get to share like one funny anecdote would be one of the first events that we had in LA. So I'm based out of Los Angeles, and we were still in closed beta. This was really early on, and there was a player came up, and I think he had to have been like 18 years old, and he came running up and was saying, "Brian, like I did it. I got my first tattoo, and it's an Ingress tattoo." And we back then, like I had no idea that people would be getting tattoos of Ingress logos or Ingress items. But the part that I knew and that he didn't know is that things often change as you're developing a product. And we were just about to change the visual look of, I think it was a specific item. It might have been like the XMP or something. We had kind of made some tweaks, and so I was telling him like, oh, that tattoo looks fantastic. There's going to be a new design that's coming next week, and I just saw like all the blood like drain out of his face. And I was saying, no, it's great. Like that's vintage. Like that's going to be a vintage tattoo, and yeah, I hope he still cherishes his XMP tattoo.
Excellent.
That's awesome. So, Brian, you've mentioned communication and how you guys know that communication is a problem at the moment. One of the questions was, how do you guys plan on improving communication? Do you guys have a specific process in mind, or any idea on how you could improve communication with agents? It's like, this is amazing, by the way. We really appreciate this chance to be able to talk to you, and I feel like this is a great step. And I did read your responses on forums saying that you would like to do more with the community, but we were wondering what other ideas you may have.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, like I mentioned, I've been trying to do things like these calls during first Saturdays. I do sometimes feel a bit bad because they almost end up turning into kind of like focus groups. Like I often ask about, if you had a golden ticket and you could change anything or fix anything with the game, what would you do? But I think doing more calls like this, that'll certainly at least be a step in the right direction. I do also want to add that I feel very appreciative and honored that you want to talk to me. So thank you again for putting this together. The other thing, though, is that we have a small team trying to figure out what the right size of the team is, and then what the right functions that we're staffing are. We don't have a dedicated community manager, and so I know the Vanguards have really, really pushed us about, this is why you need to have someone in this role, because the producer role, there's a lot of different parts to my day-to-day job. I end up spending quite a bit of time just in meetings. I would love to be able to spend more time actually being able to kind of post in the forums and close the feedback loop so people know what we're doing. But I think I would say I'd answer it twofold of one, we probably do need to revisit how we staff the team or what we're prioritizing so that we make the time to actually close that feedback loop and reply. So we're not just listening, but we're also communicating out or broadcasting out. And then two, I do also want to make sure that we're actually acting on that player feedback so that when players say, hey, this is what's broken with comm, that it's not just, I feel like the communication issue, part of it is that people share feedback and then they just don't see anything change. And so that's the part where I'm more on the engineering side, or I have more of, I guess, coming from having worked at Google for 12 years or 13 years, I look at problems more from the engineering angle. Rather than talk about it, I'd rather just fix it. And we have to do both. We have to explain, yeah, we're aware of that problem, we're working on it. Here's maybe a rough timeline for how long it might take us to do that. And then usually that same person is not the engineer behind the fix or the resolution. So we can do both, and we should be doing both.
Yeah, I think that will help a lot in responding. I know a lot of people in our own chat that we moderate, they mention, oh, well, I made this post and there wasn't anything that came of it. I didn't hear anything. And so there is the want to hear a little bit more from you guys, from agents, and that would help greatly, I think.
I think the other thing that I've kind of looked at is how are some of the other Niantic Games teams also addressing this? So, for example, with the Catan World Explorer game, so it's currently in soft launch.
Oh my god, I can't wait.
I was just looking at how they organize their forum, and their version of the forum has a bug reporting tool or kind of like a known issues like voting board in a way. And something like that, I think that could also be beneficial for both sides. Of like one, like kind of like that to-do list or that backlog that I mentioned on our side that we have internally. If players are able to tell us this is the issue that we're seeing, and then also, you know, based on the volume of reports or the volume of the +1s, this is how it might stack rank against some of the others. I think things like that would also be pretty useful. I think maybe just to take a quick note on when we do look at player feedback, why some things take longer than others. It's usually not because we're not listening, but it's because it's always easier for us to fix a technical issue if we can reproduce it. So if it's something that, for whatever reason, with either because of our kind of test conditions or the fact that we're using both internal servers or private servers for testing, and then also we test externally with the live servers as well. If it's not something that we can reliably reproduce consistently on our own devices, it just makes it more tricky to figure out the root cause of the problem. And so that's part of the reason why we also do that testing on the live server, is that the live version of the game versus a version of the game that has 20 people on it, it just works a lot differently. And so we do want to test in actual real world conditions. But when players are filing those bug reports, I'm not trying to put more work on the community, but if you are sharing, here's how I'm able to reproduce this consistently, that is always helpful for me to be able to just basically confirm and then figure out, okay, why is this thing happening? That's part of what's made the comm issue so difficult, is that it kind of depends on how many messages are coming in. So if you're looking at it from the 5-kilometer view versus the 100-kilometer view, comm is acting different. I know from the player perspective, like that's also incredibly frustrating because it's kind of inconsistently not working. And so, yeah, again, I keep bringing that up because we've been talking about how are we going to fix this thing. So it is top of mind. We're working on it, but that's an example of why things sometimes on the surface seem really trivial. Of like, well, obviously it's broken. Just fix it. But it can sometimes just be tricky if we can't reliably reproduce it consistently.
Yeah, I know there's been a couple of times that there's been like a little error that's happened that agents have been like, oh my God, this just started, and we've gone, go put it on the forums if you know exactly how it happened. And I've noticed that when there's those details that you guys have gotten to it right away. Like there was a couple of errors with a jumble of letters that you guys were able to fix really quickly because agents were able to tell you how they got that error. Specifically,
I think there's one with DroneNet that I know that took a little bit longer to fix. That fix is going to come. I believe it's in the next release, so not in 256. But there's one, for example, where DroneNet, if you don't have enough XM, instead of giving you a human readable error message of like, nope, you don't have enough XM, it instead sends back. I don't know. It's something like NHLDNNG whatever.
Yeah,
we just for fun.
Apparently
just for fun, we just converted that to a passcode that gives you XM. But the real way to fix it is we should make that a human readable error message. But I guess that's the other part too. Is like I'm not an engineer. I'm not fixing the game, but I do have access to create passcodes, or multiple people on our team have access to create passcodes. So that was one example where, yeah, we do have to actually fix the bug, and we have now fixed it. Fix is going to be released soon, but in the meantime, at least we can have those kind of Easter eggs. And I think some of the Easter eggs haven't gone over as well as others, but that one was one where it just gave me a chuckle because the actual error message is you don't have enough XM, but yeah, instead it's just some crazy string of random letters.
So, what was I just gonna say? I'm so sorry, I just blanked.
Excellent.
Excellent, Willie. You've mentioned the Vanguards a couple of times, and there was a question on whether or not you guys felt the program was useful. Obviously, it does sound like you guys do. A little extra onto that is, are you guys going to be looking into new Vanguards again soon?
So yeah, the Vanguards are absolutely useful. I don't spend as much time with the Vanguards as I should. I do get all of their feedback escalated through our team. So I know we have multiple people within basically the private Vanguard group. So that's something that, for me at least, it's been useful, kind of just getting those feedback updates that kind of get channeled through the team. And I know our team is super active from basically the abuse reports that get escalated to here's, as a player advocate, here's what we believe that you're going to see if you ship the feature in this way. Like, this is kind of a preview of the kind of feedback that we expect you're going to see. One of the things that I would also love to have help with would be, right now there's a relatively small number of Vanguards, and they're the only ones that have access to the new builds, or the sort of like our beta builds. So like we do our internal team testing, and then we release that version to Vanguards. But for us to get a little bit more of kind of a advanced early warning of, hey, if we ship this feature, it has a really strange issue with this specific Android device or with this specific version number, getting that kind of information would be more easy to suss out if we had more people within that test pool. So then trying to think through, again, I typically kind of look at problems more from like
tribute. Sorry.
Well, Brian, I
course you do.
found the tutorial bug with a drone it, so I would be, of course, #1 for a beta build. So if you do spin it up, I would love to be part of it. Just saying.
Sorry.
And I think the way that we've been looking at it too is, so I obviously know there are some players that do want to take that risk of, like, we know this is a pre-release build, that there may be issues with it. It's always been tested by our team first before it goes to a Vanguard or to the Vanguard group. But yeah, just being able to expand or widen that group a bit, I think that could be pretty useful. Whether that's something that maybe it's a recursion benefit. I know we have to make good on that promise too, of like, what do you get from recursing other than the nice red wings? That's, maybe that's something along those lines could be interesting to kind of explore.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because I know that originally there was going to be, the way that the Vanguard program had been presented, the second round was that there was going to be a continuing flow every 6 months or so. And that kind of, I know that hasn't taken priority right now, which there's a lot more that you guys are working on, which we appreciate. But it has been a question, because there has been notice that a couple Vanguards have left, and the question has been brought up: are those ones going to be replaced? There was a list of forms that agents filled out, so I think there is some interest for some agents to help, but who knows? The game has changed.
I mean, the way that I used to work with player advocates in the past, so this would have been back in the Google days. So it was more specific to setup for anomalies. So typically the way it was is that we had kind of Google Plus groups of PoCs, or like people who were points of contact for that city. But typically the way it worked would be myself and then the other game designer, we'd kind of map out, okay, these are the cities where we're going to have the event based on where we see basically the most active portals, or also where we've gotten park permits for. This is kind of the general layout of how the event is going to be run. And then we would present those to the POCs. And I think if I remember right, it was typically like 2 enlightened, 2 resistance per city. And then basically getting feedback of like, hey, does this look right? Are these the right sets of portals? Are there any gotchas here of like, no, this is actually not the best area to be in because of XYZ reason, or, you know, this is fine, but it's this specific portal, you're going to get crazy drift, or there's construction going on, or whatever. Things that we didn't know, because we're, at least for me, like I'm looking at it from basically a Google map or from Intel map.
Yeah.
But that POC program was really event specific and time specific. So they would be POCs, but it would be just for kind of a limited time window. And then there would be other people that cycled in. I wasn't around when the Vanguard program got started. And I think the premise and like the concept of it is very different from that kind of a POC program. But in terms of having player advocates, I do think it would be helpful to have people coming and going, just to get kind of, I guess, a bit more diversity of opinion in that group. But that said, I don't personally manage the Vanguard program. I think basically our marketing and our community people that we do have internal on the team, they're the ones who are most active on those private groups. And then I've kind of deferred to them on how should this program work and how should we move forward with it. But I know they have some thoughts of one, continuing to build on the Vanguard program we have, but then also some of my feedback about, it would be nice to have additional test coverage and possibly use that as a benefit for, you know, the people who do want to, who choose to opt in or who want to be a part of that beta group would be able to. I guess like the last note would just be, I don't want this to seem like a job or an obligation. Like I really do see it as, I think the work has to be done by us and by our team. And that I do see those kinds of programs as player advocates of making sure that, you know, we're kind of hearing feedback from the players, we're getting it escalated in a timely manner, but then we're also sharing that feedback back to the community. And I try to do that, I guess, with like kind of a one-to-many approach of like, if I can answer someone's question and I'm doing it over a Twitter DM or like a private message, then it's only getting heard by that one person. So that's why I typically don't respond to those. But if I'm doing something like this, where it's right now, I guess it's just, you know, technically the 3 of us chatting, but I know it's going to get shared out with many more than just 3 people. And then the other kind of note is, so because you've shared those questions with me in advance, I'll also make sure like I type up the answers so that they're a little bit, I think, more succinct and coherent. But I'll type those up and then I'll add those to the forum so that there's, you know, I think this recording, but then also kind of a text record of it in the Ingress forum that people can see. Actually, that just reminded me too, back to your question about like, how do we improve the communication? So I was a big fan of the AMAs or the Ask Me Anything things that Andrew Krug used to do. So if something like that, if this could be something like that, where I can type up my responses to your questions and then we kind of go from here, I'd be happy to do that. It's a lot easier for me to just jump on a 1-hour call versus trying to answer multiple questions every day. So again, that's why I'm so grateful and thankful, is you're saving me a lot of time.
Thank you. I do want to just put it out there that we really do appreciate the Vanguards that have been with you guys and working with you guys. Like, I mean, they're being our voices in many different ways, and they're testing out stuff for us. So, which we're all eager to see.
Right, so we're coming up on the final points we would like to talk about. So the pandemic, it was horrible. I think I live near Milan, so I lived it in full, I can say. It must have been I imagine it must have been a period of trying to organize things differently in a very rapid way for you at Niantic. Please confirm or tell me otherwise if I'm wrong. And we are seeing that this is calming down a bit somewhere in the world, and some agents are wondering what will come after the pandemic. The pandemic ends and things get back to normal in terms of events, anomalies, and possibly even global events. Since agents in our chat have shown to really like those kind of events.
Yeah. So the pandemic, I did not expect it to, I guess, be as dangerous or as deadly as it was and last as long as it was. So when I first saw the reports coming out, this would have been like, I guess, closer to like Christmas time. You know, I'm struggling to figure out the right way to say it, but like my hope, I guess, back then was that, you know, we had seen some of those kinds of things like MERS or SARS where, you know, we were able to solve those things. And this is very different. It's, I certainly have never seen anything like this in my lifetime. We are trying to take things really in a way day by day because things keep changing. The pandemic is not over. There are places where they got affected or hit harder than others. It's also kind of interesting to see, I guess, you know, different countries or governments' response to the pandemic. I think for us on the Ingress side, it's really been trying to find that right balance of making sure that we're doing what needs to be done from a player safety perspective, but then also recognizing that, you know, we are a real world game and there are a lot of benefits to, you know, be safe, but there are benefits to when you are able to play outside safely or to go for walks. It doesn't mean to be reckless or, you know, meet up with other people in large groups, you know, but being able to go outside for me has probably been the thing that's kind of kept me even keeled, is that I'm able to go out and go to portals and play the game and get some fresh air, get some sun. And not everyone is fortunate to be able to do that. So again, kind of going back to that I think original question, the one difficulty on the Ingress side is that our changes are typically global sweeping changes. We don't have that granularity to say, you know, in every place that we can do, it's these sets of settings or these sets of knobs. It's really, when we make that change, it's every player everywhere in the world experiences the same thing. So that's been tricky to navigate. But I do firmly believe that, like, I think being able to go outside and play safely, being able to spend time outdoors and just, you know, clear my head, it feels better, especially because I'm working from home, working, you know, basically from what's effectively a closet. It's nice to be able to go outside. And that's one of the things that, if we can be that nudge to invite people to come back outside, you know, go to portals, again, play safely, wear a mask, keep your physical distance, but that doesn't mean, you know, kind of shutter yourself away from other people. This is just my personal feeling, but like, I really dislike the term social distancing, because it feels like now more than ever, like it's important, like this Zoom call, to actually have social connections and check in with each other, check in with your friends, check in with your family, but keep physical distance. And I think that's the kind of approach that we've been trying to take, is, you know, absolutely maintain your physical difference, but physical distance, but when you can check in with one another, we still want to have virtual first Saturdays where you can meet, either over Telegram or Zoom or other apps, but you are still socially connected to the community and to your friends. So yeah, that's that piece about it. Looking forward though, I think there are a couple parts to it where I do think it's going to take a long time for things to kind of go back to the way they were, prior to March, when things locked down in LA or prior to COVID. And I don't know that they're going to go necessarily back exactly to the way they used to be. I can certainly imagine, for example, in an anomaly scenario, the idea of having hundreds of people converge on a small place, maybe that needs to be spread out a bit more, or maybe the game design needs to be changed. But I do know that agents really love the live events. They want them to come back. They don't necessarily want them to come back this moment, but they do want them to come back when it's safe to be able to do so. And so we're making plans to figure out, how do we do that? I think there are some of the things that we've done that are kind of baby steps in that direction, even prior to COVID. So things like the team had made changes to mission days, so that with the last mission day that I went to, it was San Antonio, which that was like just before the lockdown happened, at least here in California. But it was basically at midnight, the missions went live. I didn't have to check in with another person. It didn't mean that like there weren't meetups happening or breakfasts happening. There were still social things happening. It just didn't mean that an admin or a host had to do the kind of manual part of the check-in and check-out process. There's more of, you can enjoy the more fun parts of connecting with other people and actually going out and enjoying the mission day. And the more that we could try to offload or scale those kinds of parts where they're kind of like the grungy work, I feel like, of hosting a first Saturday or hosting a mission day. And then the more we can do to sort of automate the bottlenecks that are kind of preventing more player organized events from happening, I think that's one thing that we can start doing right now, so that we are ready when we're able to return to live in-person physical events. The other kind of comment or question that I've also been seeing is we had plans, for example, of trying to do kind of those like Nemesis style live ops, or there were challenges of like the global challenges of there was like a mission one that was going to happen, and then the lockdown happened, and that kind of just got punted or postponed. But as we're kind of reevaluating things, there certainly feels like there are ways to bring those back. And so that's what we're working on right now, is trying to figure out what is the right way to bring those kinds of global challenges back to the game. And then can we do it in a way that still feels like basically authentic to Ingress, and it's something that brings people socially together, if not physically together. So that's what we're working on right now. So I would say in the near term, stay tuned. We are actively trying to figure out the right game plan for how do we do that style of event. Longer term, we absolutely want to return to doing anomaly events or like larger scale player events. There kind of was a period where I think the team was kind of experimenting with more cross-faction kind of things, of like cross-faction shards or hexathlons that were kind of like a First Saturday plus. And I think those were really important experiments to try. I'm always in favor of let's see what happens. But as long as we're taking lessons learned from that and then figuring out how are we going to do better next time. So I think we've been able to do that on the team and figure out these are the things that that do work, that players enjoy, that players like and want to see more of. These are the things where, okay, we tried it, we can either discontinue or scale it back, or just find the right way to do those things. So we want to go back to doing live events, just trying to figure out kind of what's the first baby step to do that in the short term, and then longer term, how do we prep for what I guess like the new normal might look like.
I know that that's been a big question when we've been in IFS Zooms on when are we going back into in person, and the conversation has been very much, well, if we try to go back in person, it has to be safe, and it has to be because this is a global game, it has to be something that everyone's going to be able to eventually go into. And right now the world's just so different, and some people are doing well and other people aren't. And we don't personally, on the Fevs game side, have a way to be able to track. And I doubt that you guys have a way to be able to track which areas are open and which areas aren't.
Yeah, the hard part too is that it's not just the specific challenge or the specific games. So for like one example would be like a mission day. So the act of doing a mission,
Yeah.
I think that can be done, even in the pandemic in most places. So I could do a mission by myself, and then, or at least like physically distance from other people, and do that mission. But then the complicating thing is if we were doing a mission day, well, then you might encourage people to travel, which we wouldn't want to do that. And then the other piece is that if you did have that kind of an event, then there's typically other things that are happening outside of just doing the mission of like, I want to go grab a beer with someone, or I want to give someone a high five or a hug or something. You just have other players that you haven't seen in a long time, or that maybe they're not, they're not local or whatever. And those are the external factors, or the outside the game factors, that we're also considering of. These are all the things that we have to keep in mind when we talk about like what is a live event in Ingress.
Yeah.
And it's not just the fact that there's a mission there and there's a nice medal that you can get for it. There's all those other things that we also take into consideration, and that's why I don't believe I've gotten that balance right, and it's something that it is something I'm kind of reevaluating, trying to figure out how do we come back to some form of global challenge or something like that. But we will get it right, and we are working on it.
That's good to hear, because I know a lot of people are wanting to see that happen, and some sooner than others, of course.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Brian. We are finished, basically. But I do have one more question to basically round up everything. You did quickly talk about it, but I do want to ask, what's next, basically? There are a few things rumored, like the subscription. So what's next?
So in the short term, really, like one of the things that I've been trying to take a deep dive on personally was just looking at cataloging all the feedback that we've been getting from the forum, from the Play Store and App Store reviews. So basically trying to get an assessment of, here's kind of the state of the union. Here's the state of where the community's at and where the game is at. So that when I'm building out that backlog, or that kind of to-do list of here's what we need to do based on the volume of feedback that we're seeing, and the number of players that might be affected, how do we know quantitatively that this is the right set of things that we should work on and in the right order? So that's kind of where I've been spending a lot of my time recently, is just, okay, here's, based on what I'm hearing or what the team is hearing, here are things that I think we need to fix. We kind of did something like that before retiring Redacted, where when I joined the team, there was kind of like a top 10 list of like, I was still using Redacted when I first came back to Niantic, and for me to move over to Prime, I felt like we need to do XYZ things. And I feel like right now, we've been trying to ship new things in the game over the last year. We've been trying to work kind of behind the scenes on basically making the game and making the team a bit more sustainable. And what that's meant is that there are kind of quality of life or just issues that have kind of crept in over time, calm again being like one of the most glaring ones. And so trying to like rebalance to figure out how do we make sure that we're fixing issues and not basically taking one step forward and two steps back. So that's in the short term the thing that I would like to see. In the longer term, I do think Ingress has so much potential just because it's a different kind of real world game, where, you know, assuming the pandemic is over, assuming, like, you know, vaccines are out and people are actually taking the vaccines, then kind of imagining the future version of players being able to coordinate across country borders and language borders to create these large fields and have those fields matter, have them be part of some meaningful part of either an anomaly or some kind of live event, having the idea of, you know, we used to do, for example, these, like, I would call them seasons in the game. So every 3 months there would be like a Helios or 13 Magnus or Recursion. That kind of seasonality to Ingress is something that I like to see as well. Obviously, like, trying to get more players back into the game. I think, one, if we improve the way the game works, improve the way, you know, it looks and feels, but then also just address some of those top player reported issues, we may be able to win some of those players that left, and win them back. But I also think there's so many people that haven't played Ingress yet that we could also sort of bring into the fold. So yeah, there are players that, for example, in the LA area that I've seen come over from Pokemon Go, that they were level 40 players, and then, you know, maybe they felt like, got to catch them all, and I caught them all, and so now I'm looking for what's next. And if there are certain high-level Pokemon Go players that also would want to come into Ingress, really, I just want more people playing the game. And I know there's a kind of a stigma, or like kind of a meme that surfaced about trainers aren't agents. And I do understand kind of at a high level, like what's meant by that. But really, like, I want the game to be welcoming and approachable to everyone. That doesn't mean watering down Ingress or turning it into a Pokemon Go. They're doing well enough on their own. I really do want to plant a flag in the ground and say what Ingress is a competitive faction versus faction game. It's cross-border, cross-language. This really, like, in a way, like this international version of Capture the Flag on steroids. And really, like, the main draw for the game for me is the player community. And if there are tools that we can provide or games that we can provide to make building that community and strengthening that community more fun, that's the direction that we want to head. So yeah, the whole reason I came back was I'm in love with Ingress. I think it can be so much bigger and grander than it is today. We are actively working to try to make that happen. There were a lot of things that we had to kind of do, at least in my first year back, just to kind of get things set up so that we can do those kinds of things. So really looking forward to, 2021 and onward so that we can continue to grow the game.
Yeah, I've seen the stigma against Pokemon Go players. We see it in our chat pretty often, but we also have players in our chat that they came from Pokemon Go, and we actively tried to go, okay, look, not everyone, it fits what you're thinking, and we need to be welcoming to anyone that comes to the game that actually wants to play legitimately. Not just get an account so that they can look at the Intel map, but legitimately want to play and be involved in the community, and we shouldn't be discouraging them at all. So, anyways, sorry.
I mean, for me, it's really the more people playing the game, the better. And wherever I
need
can get
more enlightened. Bring more enlightened to Northern Cali. Come on.
And so, yeah, the ways that we want to try to approach that is also there's, I think, again, going back to COM, there's a lot of things there where it's really hard to find those new recruits or those new players. And it used to be, I think, a little bit easier for people who did want to be those mentors or want to help those new players kind of level up and take them under their wing. It was easier to find them in the old version of the game. So all of those kinds of things they're all on the to-do list. They're all on the backlog. We just have to get the order right so that we're doing them in the right sequence, the right order of operations. But yeah, I think, with players' help, trying to give their feedback and their guidance of here's what's most important to us. If we can do that, either through me building out this ridiculous Google sheet, or if it's that known issues board that something like Catan has, and we're kind of using multiple data points. That's, again, like I do try to look at it from kind of this, I don't know, engineering approach or like more technical approach, because that's just, for me, I think how I've been trying to address the different challenges that I see is, we got to just take them one at a time, and then let's do them in this order. So really looking forward to working with the player community. I want to do more chats like these. I'll also, after this call, type it up in a, again, more cohesive, succinct way, and then add that to the Ingress forum.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your time, and thanks for all your really thoughtful questions. Whatever way that I can be helpful, please just let me know.
Can I have more glyphs? And can you give me a sequence that you have hacked so I can add it to my glyph journal? That would be extremely helpful to me.
I think we certainly should kind of revisit the database or the list of glyphs that we do have. I know there's some that are in there that maybe they were temporary because of April Fools or from different events.
No. You guys have gotten those out. Trust me, I know this because I track your glyphs. Like, you've gotten those out, but I would like Signal.
I think we've gotten those out, but some of them I actually would like to add back in. Like,
yes,
I think
please. Sorry, I get excited about glyphs, obviously. But yes, I would be very grateful.
Okay, I believe this will be wrapping up our interview. Please, Brian, don't leave. We would like to torture you a little bit more. And thank you, of course. Thank you so much for taking the time of your day to do this thing with us. On behalf of the entire community, at least the part we moderate in the chat. And I hope to everybody that listens this that this will be really helpful. We look forward to what's coming in Ingress. We really look forward to that. Thank you. Thank you very much again.
Yeah, and again, just thank you so much for organizing this, but also thank you to all the players. Thank you for playing our game. I know, there's a lot of work that's ahead of us. Thank you for sticking with the team. Thank you for your patience. And we are working to make things better and bigger and better.